We can.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want me to start? Well, you're finishing up, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. For the official start of our Autistic Pride Chat, happy Autistic Pride Day, everyone. My name is Marion McNicoll. I am one of the founders and organisers at Autistic Pride Aberdeen, which this year is being hosted by my wee business Aurora. Who wants to go next? Fergus, you're unmuted. Can I nominate you?
I am. Hi. So I'm Fergus Murray. I'm the chair of Omeiza, Autistic Mutual Aid Society, Edinburgh. Here in sunny Edinburgh. And I'm going to just update my screen name and hand over to Sofia, who is unmuted.
I also need to update my screen name. I'm Sofia, sitting here in Falkirk, from Scottish Ethnic Minority Autistics. Yay. Kabie?
I'm Kabie, I'm in Inverness, and I'm from Autism Rights Group Highland. Sorry.
No, thank you. I'm really excited. I absolutely love Autistic Pride. I think it's such a really important day in our calendar. We've got a few really important days, but Autistic Pride for me is one of my favourites. And I think we were going to start out by talking a little bit about the history of Pride. Like, why do we even have Pride in the first place? And Kabie, am I right in thinking that you attended the very first Autistic Pride that was held online back in 2005?
Oh no, I'm going to say no.
Were you not? Oh no, why was I thinking that?
I was there. So, well, the first Autistic Pride was created by Aspies for Freedom. So really Gwen and Amy Nelson. And I was part of that group, but I don't actually remember the first one. That could be memory difficulties. So I was celebrating it since 2005, but I wasn't celebrating as part of Aspies for Freedom. I just sort of took the idea away, and for the first few years was just celebrating with my family and then with some friends. So, you know, I'm not even sure that the first Autistic Pride was online. It was celebrated certainly on the Aspies for Freedom message board, but I'm not sure if there was an event. Sorry.
No, thank you. It was really good to get that information. I think it's so important that whenever you are taking part in a movement like this, to know sort of where it started and understand that, so that you can see the growth and the development of it, because it went from being a very small one-day event that one wee group started, and now it's global. It gets celebrated everywhere. I'm not sure if it's every continent. I haven't heard of Antarctica celebrating Autistic Pride yet.
I seen an article from India about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I googled about the themes, and then there was an article from India. So, like, oh, so it's reached far. It's good.
Yeah. Well, I remember during COVID, whenever the Autistic Pride Alliance was hosting events, I think we had people from about 4 different continents all celebrating Autistic Pride and sharing live streams and sharing pre-recorded videos and all sorts of things. So it has very much become a growing global phenomenon, which I really love. And I think the more that people are talking about autism in the mainstream, the better it is, that there's more of us who are talking about what the reality is of being autistic, and the fact that being autistic isn't just like a list of deficits that are associated with the diagnostic criteria, that we have a whole community and culture. Is that fair to say, would you think? As far as I'm aware, there's still quite a lot going on this year, but I haven't heard from as many people. I think we definitely benefit whenever we have a lot of folks coming together, and I kind of missed that we had during COVID, of people coming together and putting on prides at the same time. But at the same time, I'm really excited that there's loads of different pride celebrations that are going on all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it looked that it was going to be quite small this year because I think Joseph Redford is in charge of coordinates a map to show
Yeah.
different rides, and quite early on it was only 3, but I think it's a bit more populated now. So you can look up Autistic Pride Alliance on YouTube, and there is a map linked to that. I think that is an open group. But even what's on the map won't show the full picture because a lot of people celebrate privately, or they don't. Some people just don't really want it to be a public event, so people are doing their own things in their own way. Because Autistic Pride isn't just one thing; it's not necessarily having an event. Sometimes it's just going for a nice walk, or doing your favourite thing, or talking to friends and family, or people do so many different things. So not everyone has a big event. I don't think anyone has a huge event. It's what some people sometimes say to like we were speaking to a journalist recently who was like, what are you going to do next? Are you going to make it bigger? And I'm like, oh, it's quite nice if it's small. Which is really, I don't know, maybe that's an autistic thing, but it's kind of weird. We have this event and it's great and everyone's welcome and it's lovely. But actually, if 500 people turned up, we might cry.
I think that's very fair. The first time that we put on Autistic Pride Aberdeen, it was 3 months after I'd found out that I was autistic and had absolutely no experience of putting on any kind of events, but I was aware of the Autistic Pride movement, and I definitely thought that it was time that Aberdeen joined in with that. So we popped on an event and we rocked up at Hazelhead Park, and we had no idea how many people were going to turn up. And we had about 100 that first year. And I was really surprised and delighted and overwhelmed, and all the different feelings. And I think this is our 7th Autistic Pride that we're putting on this Saturday. And I think the most that we've had has been about up to 200. But I like that if it's around about, between 1 and 200, that it's a manageable number, that it doesn't get too overwhelming for anyone. And that people can just kind of drop in and out as much as they want. So they can come along for 5 minutes and then they can disappear, and then they can come back again for another 5 minutes, and then they can go off and do something else. And I like that it's not you have to stay for a while, or you don't have to pay, you don't have to be too organized about it. You can just wake up that morning and decide, you know what, yeah, I'm feeling it, let's go, and stay for as long as you want, rather than having that big obligation. I think the sensory impact that it would be if we all had, a big march down the city centre and we had drums and all the rest of it. Because I've taken part in our local LGBT plus Pride for the last few years, and I love it. It's great, but sensory-wise, it is really overwhelming, and I have to go and lie down in a dark room afterwards. I kind of want people to come along to any Autistic Pride event that I put on and not necessarily have to go and lie down in a dark room afterwards. Does that make sense?
That's the difference between having an autistic organised event and a non-autistic organised event, isn't it? I think normally for a non-autistic led events, you'd want bigger and noisier and all. But for us, it's like, no, you're all right. Just small's fine and intimate's fine as long as everybody else is okay. It's a more individual, intimate approach. Which is counterintuitive if you want to like spread the word and tell everyone it's okay to show that you're autistic and be proud of your autistic identities, because that's what we want to spread that whole message, is to be proud and being yourself. Actually, Fergus, you're going to speak there now, but see, also what I was wanting to talk about is with yourself is the weird pride as well, and that kind of fits into what you did with weird pride with our autistic pride day as well.
Yeah, so I was going to say something about how there's always a tension. I think this is kind of everywhere, but it's certainly glaring in autistic communities, between getting as many people in and like making it okay for everyone who was there at the start. And yeah, like, Omeiza's grown and grown. We started out with like half a dozen people and we're up to several hundred now. And I mean, it's great, but it's getting harder and harder to manage. And it's not like the people running it have any more capacity than we did at the start. In fact, we have less. We do have more people coming in to help out, which is fantastic, and it's lovely when it works. But yeah, for me, so Autistic Pride, the first Autistic Pride picnic that we ran as a maze, was great. Yeah, we had 100 or so people, and we kind of went all out. The Amaze organizers totally wiped ourselves out for that. And every year since, I've been trying to do a bit less and leave it up to other people a bit more, which has been kind of working. But yeah, so Weird Pride sort of ties in with that, because it's this thing, isn't it, of who do we include? Like, in our struggles, do we want to say, yes, we're all in this together? Or do we want to say, actually, there are some very specific things about like our little population which really require attention? And I think it's got to be both. So for me, growing up, I knew I was weird. I didn't know I was autistic. And it was very important to me to, have weird role models and like people that I could connect with, that I knew I had something in common with. I didn't know I was autistic until I was 31. And it's very important for young autistic people who still might not know that they're autistic. Like, a lot more people are realizing these days, but a lot of them still don't know, and a lot of people have things in common with autistic people who are not autistic. They are outsiders for one reason or another. They find crowds difficult. They find fitting in difficult, right? It's not just an autistic thing. So for me, it's important to be in solidarity with everyone who doesn't fit in for whatever reason, right?
I think that's what I really like about Weird Pride as well, because Weird Pride is so open to so many people. Like, anyone can join in Weird Pride. I mean, anyone can join in Autistic Pride, but having these different Pride events that people can go along to, that they can find one that actually means something to them, find a community for them there. I think that's a really, really important thing too. And I'm like you, I didn't realize that I'm autistic until I was 39 when I found out. So I think you all beat me. You maybe all got there slightly earlier. And it's such a revelation moment whenever you get to understand that that is who you are. And you have this framework. So yes, I am weird. That's for sure. There's no denying that. But there's a framework for understanding that weirdness that really, really mattered to me. And I think that it's fantastic that people have that opportunity. And then whenever you get events like Weird Pride or Autistic Pride, you can go along and meet other people who are like you and start to find that community and start to really build up. A couple of years ago, we had our first Autistic Pride back in the park after a couple of years online. One of my friends came along, it was their first Pride, and they were quite overwhelmed and quite happy, and they said, it's so nice to see so many autistics out in the wild. And that's really stuck with me every year. And there were all these people who'd maybe sort of met each other online, and actually getting to see each other in person was so meaningful for them. And I think that's what gets me as somebody who organises Pride events, is seeing the reaction that it has on other people. Because you do get exhausted organising events. Even if you make it small events, it can still be quite exhausting. But seeing that impact that it has on other people, I mean, I'll take an afternoon in the dark if that's what it takes. And it is, I think I find that overwhelming. I'm not quite sure what words to use for it, because there are just too many words. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to say, isn't there, about like pride in general. Pride is a kind of general concept. which these days, and for a long time now, by default, when people talk about pride, they mean LGBTQ plus queer pride, which is great. You know, that's the movement which has kind of pushed the idea of pride as a refusal to feel ashamed into public consciousness. But it's significant that the idea goes back before it was adopted by us queers. You know, Black Pride was a thing in the 60s. That's, you know, when LGBTQ plus pride was starting out, they quite consciously adopted some of the language that had been used by the Black liberation movement. And yeah, so now we have, you know, we've got this beautiful, inclusive, queer pride thing going on. But because it's so inclusive, it's not as inclusive as I'd like it to be, which is to say that pride marches tend to be massive, very loud, extremely crowded, which doesn't necessarily suit autistic people.
We've done a thing with our local Grampian Pride for the last few years where I've walked at the back of the parade with a bunch of other autistic queers and allies, and then that way the noise is only coming from the front. So there is a lot of noise and we're all wearing loops and flares and ear defenders and all the rest of it, so that we can be in that space. A lot of us took along emotional support plushies, fidget toys, you name it, whatever it is that was going to help us to feel comfortable. And just going to the back, yes, there was an awful lot of noise and there was a lot of overwhelm, but we were able to make sure that it was only coming from one direction, not every direction. And even then, it was still overwhelming. But that first year that I walked it, we walked the Pride. And then we walked the Pride March, which was great. And then I worked at a stall and then had to go to a black tie event that evening. I think I was a bit broken for about a week afterwards. And it was brilliant and I thoroughly enjoyed it and I would do it again. But you do have to think about that cost benefit. You know, if I spend this many spoons today, how many days do I then need to spend recuperating afterwards? Which is a fair thing to do. Are any of the others, do Omeiza and Args support their local LGBT plus prides as well? Or Kabie, were you going to talk about something completely different?
Probably, but now I've forgotten because you asked another question.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, we always have a stall at our local Highland Pride. It's next weekend. We had sort of penciled in next weekend for Autistic Pride, but obviously we didn't want to clash because we couldn't replicate ourselves. So we had our Autistic Pride Saturday just gone, and then this coming Saturday, the 22nd, we're going to be at Highland Pride with the stall, and obviously there's a massive crossover with community, so we'll get a lot of autistic people coming up to us and talking to us. So yeah, we're always there. We're like a bit of a fixture at Highland Pride, and we'd all be going anyway, so we might as well not all be there. A lot of us would be going anyway, so we might as well have a stall. Yeah, but it is busy and it is noisy and it is difficult. But yeah, it's worth it. I'd still go anyway. I've been to LGBT prides for a long time, like even when I didn't live in Scotland. Okay, so it's just a thing that I go to. But the Highland one is a lot smaller than some of the London ones that I used to go to. It's massively huge. Yeah, and I think it's yeah, it's kind of interesting how LGBT pride has progressed as well, because I know that a lot of people are quite critical of it. I mean, Highland hasn't got massively huge, but maybe it will. I don't know. I'm not involved in the organising of that. But it's become, for some, I think, quite corporate. And I think people have said to me, is Autistic Pride going to do that? Are you going to go that way? Are you going to do it? And me personally, I don't think I would ever do that because of the trying to keep it small thing. Like we've had Autistic Pride where it's been bucketing it down with rain, and it's just been a few people hiding under gazebos. And we've had, I think, our biggest one was 400 people. and then the one that's just gone was around 100 people. But we don't have any plans to do a march or drums or whistles or it was I think it was maybe last year that we did the parade, because we usually have the Autistic Pride flag along with the Progress by Pride flag and go in the parade for Highland Pride. And last year some people turned up with whistles. It might have been a previous year. Anyway, one year people turned up with whistles, autistic people turned up with whistles to march with us, and we were like very politely like, they look nice around your neck. But please don't. We're like, but whistles, yeah, they're great. That's a great necklace you've got on. That's totally non-functional. That does make me sound really mean. But yeah, we tend to, I don't know, yeah, Highland Pride tends to have a really noisy whistly bit, and then we do tend to be further towards the back. So good for us, it's good for them.
See, the rise of whistles at marches baffles me. I feel like when I was a kid, they weren't a thing, and it's like, I don't know. It's like people are just bringing along these instruments of pain. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Like, what do they add? They add just a loud whistling sound. But why?
I don't know. I think I can see where some people are coming from, because it is the be loud, be proud. We are here. We're going to make a noise, so you can't ignore it. I think that's what's going on there.
Yeah. Why not bring an angle grinder if you want to make a noise?
We want to be loud and proud and make a noise, but we want to make a quiet noise.
Pleasant noise. I'd settle for pleasant noise.
Maybe more of the irritant noise rather than the loud noise. Subtle, noisy words and comments and articles rather than in your face.
Yeah. Omeiza as an organisation has never participated in LGBTQ Pride. I'm usually there. Lots of other last year I definitely bumped into a whole series of Omeiza members there. But no, as an organisation, we've never participated. We probably should. The first Autistic Pride picnic that we ran was, I think, if not the same weekend as Edinburgh Pride, then the weekend before. I kind of think it was the same weekend. It wasn't the same day. But that sort of put us off having it around actually Autistic Pride Day a bit, because there's some confusion there. Autistic Pride is for pride in being autistic. It's not about pride in being autistic and queer specifically. Obviously, like most of us are queer, like most of the organisers are queer and or trans, but not, that's not a requirement. It's not about that. It's about being autistic and proud. And that confusion of having something with the title Pride in the middle of June with like rainbow symbolism does cause some confusion. So Edinburgh Pride is on the 27th of July this year. July for 2 years.
It does cause confusion. There is confusion. We had to be a lot clearer this year, and being clear without making it sound like we weren't welcoming people, because obviously all is welcome. And, a lot of our committee will be at the other one and would have gone anyway, even if we didn't have a stall. But we had it quite good in Highland, because even though obviously June is Pride Month, Highland Pride was usually in July or August, but this year they decided to go with June, and that kind of did add with the confusion. And it sounds like I'm being critical. I'm not being critical. They can have it whenever they like. But what I'm saying is it added to the confusion, because we don't want to move. We can't move Autistic Pride Day. That's when it is. But yeah, there's a confusion. But someone did actually say to me, "Oh, was Autistic Pride chosen to be in Pride Month? Because that's really cool. Because if there are lots of different prides in Pride Month, that would be even better. Shouldn't, I was like, no, it was just kind of an accident. It wasn't.
Nobody talked about Pride Month back then. It wasn't a thing. Certainly in the UK, it just wasn't a thing.
No. I say that to people and they look at me like but I'm like, I'm sure when I was younger, it wasn't Pride Month. It was the anniversary of Stonewall and different events sort of around that day.
Yeah. And the anniversary of Stonewall is right at the end of June. So like London Pride has always been in July.
Yeah.
And there are Pride celebrations basically throughout the summer all over Europe. So, you know, the idea of being Pride Month is kind of an American import, which is unavoidable
Where it came
these
from
days.
because it wasn't a thing when I was younger. Pride Month, Pride obviously was, but not Pride Month. Yeah, I was going to say something else, and that's what was I going to mention? I don't know.
Well, I mean, the date for Autistic Pride was chosen because it was the birthday of the youngest member in Aspies for Freedom, who was a young trans woman. So the links between Autistic Pride and LGBT plus Pride was right there from the beginning. There wouldn't be an Autistic Pride if it hadn't been for queer and trans autistic people. So
it wouldn't be, because Gwen Nelson, who founded it, is a trans woman. So
yeah.
you know, it's all totally intertwined anyway. Well, there is some unpicking, but kind of isn't. Yeah.
But I do love that variety, though, of what you get at Autistic Pride events, because there isn't like a standard. So if I go to an LGBT plus Pride event, then I generally expect that there's going to be a parade and probably a village and a stage and performers and, you know, charity stalls and that kind of thing. Whereas if I was to go to an Autistic Pride event, I'd be like, I have no idea what's going to be happening at this one. That's exciting. I kind of like that. And we're doing 2 events this year, Autistic Pride Aberdeen. So tonight we're having an online info dumping session where people can come along and talk about the stuff that they really love for a few minutes, and then people can answer questions about it. Whereas the one that we have this weekend, I think, is kind of similar to what you had last weekend, Kabie, where we're going to go to the park, we're going to blow some enormous bubbles, we're going to read some books that are written by autistic people, got some colouring in pages of our beautiful dragon, the non-binary dragon Cal. We're going to make some friendship bracelets and share them with each other. And it sounds really chill, and I can't wait. I'm so excited about it. But other people do completely different things, and that's awesome. That's brilliant, because there's no one single standard way, is there?
I like that the default seems to be a picnic, though.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I was going to mention. Sometimes people say, well, maybe you could move Autistic Pride. What about November? Or they just pick a random month. I'm like, well, traditionally, it's an outside space, and a lot to do around picnics and being outside. So November, December, not so great. And with it being an outside space is really cool, because there are no walls. It's a lot easier to approach, or it's a lot easier to be on the fringes, or it's a lot easier to pass. You know, you don't have to commit. You know what I mean? If you're new, you can kind of hover, and no one really knows you're hovering because you're in a park or an outside space. So you could do that anyway. Yeah. So Sofia, I want to hear from you. I want to know what you're doing, what you have done, what you have planned.
So I'm really new to all this. I'm just looking online about Autistic Pride in Eastern countries, and the language is still pretty deficit. It's still, yay, celebrate having a disorder. We've got quite far to go. We've got quite far to go. And I have to say thank you so much. I'm learning so much from you guys as well. Because I didn't know about Autistic Pride Day until I met Marion, and you did the Aberdeen one online before, like when COVID time. And Fergus, what you're saying there is actually really, I really appreciate you sharing that. The roots of it comes from Black Pride, and it's not. And whenever I'm telling people who I know who are Muslim or ethnic minority, Asian, and we're celebrating Pride, I have to have a caveat that I'm not talking about LGBT Pride. It's different. It's proud about being autistic. That in itself is a taboo. It's like, why are you proud about being autistic? Right? That's one thing. The other one is because it's in Pride Month, is that conflation, right? It's like, no, it's not, it's trying to get it out there that it's that whole concept that you can be openly autistic and it's fine. Because of the whole deficit model that's so rife. It's when you tell anyone you're autistic, like, oh, that's such a shame. And you get that empathy, sympathy, fake sympathy. So I think I'm learning from you all, learning from all the other advocates and folks in the autistic space. We've got quite far to go, and I think we need a lot of your help because we're so far behind in understanding and accepting being autistic, and the language being one. Secondly, being open. Yeah, so I would like that maybe by next year we could do maybe not online, because in Scottish Ethnic Minority Autistics is not just in one place, we are national. And what we have different from all the other Scottish organisations is that we're not actually national, we're really international, because a lot of us have connections from wherever our heritage is. We will have family there, extended family there. So we're talking about our migrant population, we're talking about people who have been recently settled or settled many years ago over here. So we've still got those connections from back home, and then we're still trying to educate them as well. And so I think the burden of us, our burden, I think, is slightly more because we're fighting that colonial mentality as well. And I think we need to go back onto that whole Black Pride and maybe join it with that to say, and again, back to that fighting that colonial mentality. That I think is the agenda, I think, for me, to understand that being autistic is not bad. And I've cut down quite a lot this past year because of personal circumstances, but I want to be more visible. And I think me being visible has actually helped a lot of other people being open. In fact, I had a family friend saying, Sofia makes being autistic look cool, and being neurotypical not cool. And I'm like, I'll take that compliment. But I need to work harder on that now. I need to get back into the game and be more visible. And I think that's probably what it is. Pride, we're talking about, being loud and proud. Visibility is really important for us in our community. It's still not there. So that's what we need to work on before we can, I don't know, safely say unmask and safely say, yeah, we're autistic. Because I don't think we're there yet.
No, it's one reason why Pride is such a big part of so many liberation movements, because in order to resist, you need to be visible, you need to be seen, and in order to be seen, you need to not be hiding.
Or hidden.
Yeah.
Hidden or hidden away, shamed away, or traumatized away. Quite emotional actually. I feel quite emotional about it. Maybe I'm already teary, that's why I'm already my that's all over. I'm quite sensitive right now. But yeah, we've got quite a lot far to go, and I think we do need help with the wider autistic community to support us, help with that kind of that liberation and that pride in our identities of being different rather than being disordered. And again, that whole disability thing, that disability, the bad word, that's just totally embedded in capitalism. Like people will argue with me, particularly carers, like we don't want to use the word disability. And it's like, well, as a person who has a disability, who is disabled, who is autistic and all that, and who I know I speak to people in the same realms, I don't think it's for somebody who's like a carer, for somebody who's not disabled, to be imposing that on us. Same with, some of the things I'm reading online about Autistic Pride is, at the same time talking about Autistic Pride, on the same page, they're saying the ASD.
Yeah.
And that's just really confusing, and it's not going to help. And it's, again, Eastern communities that are using that kind of language, which just doesn't help. I think this discussion we're having today and the fact that it's SEMA posting it, and I hope we can just post it out, they can understand the background. And I think that's super important that I've got you guys here talking about this is a starting point, the background, what it means, what we can do in the future to make things better for all autistic people of all backgrounds, all over the world. Yeah. It's really, I'm quite emotional about it. I see those things that are going on with the whole liberation movements that are all over the world, not just in one place, but it is from east to the west. Everyone is fighting for liberation in one way or the other. And one thing I've noticed, and I was saying this to my sister, particularly ethnic minorities, the new word used for ethnic minorities is actually global majority. And if you really think about it, it's actually the global majority that have been oppressed. And that's why we need these kind of pride events and these movements, and for us to come together, all of us together, because if one person isn't liberty, then nobody is. And that's the kind of concept of togetherness that we need to bring together. Like, hello, why is it that the majority are oppressed? That doesn't even make sense technically. What happened to democracy? What happened to power? The majority of people in this world are powerless. Like, that just doesn't make sense. Like, we need to change the narrative by coming together and accepting and utilizing our power that we have. Every one of us does have it. And if that means sharing stories is at a starting point, And if it just means somebody coming up on screen and saying, I'm proud of who I am, how I am, what I present to the world and how the world presents to me, if I'm proud of that and I accept it, that's a good starting point for us.
I think that's one of the reasons why we... Oh, sorry, go on, Kabie.
Hey, you asked a question there, Sophia, but I think you'd already answered it before you asked it. Like, why is it that the majority are oppressed? Well, you said it, it's capitalism. That, you know, perhaps we shouldn't be too political, but pride is political. It is political. That is like entwined within it.
Everything's political.
And
Everything is
also
political.
something else you said about seeing ASD written. The amount of people that you see going, yay, Autistic Pride, and then they have a little picture and it has puzzle pieces in it. They're like, what? No, what planet are you on? What is going on? No, not puzzle pieces, not puzzle pieces. It's just mind blowing. And I often get asked, oh, Autistic Pride, so are you proud to be autistic? And I'll say, no, not particularly. But then hope that they listen to what I say next. Because it's like, I'm not like, yeah, I'm autistic and I'm proud. It's not. For me, Autistic Pride is about rejecting shame and about being equal and about being valid. It's not about me saying I'm particularly proud about being autistic. It's just that you're not going to make me feel ashamed and badly small. And that's why you have to be visible, isn't it? That's about
it's not like we have to pass an exam in order to be autistic. It's not something that we had to work hard at being. It's literally something that we don't have any choice at.
Well done, us. We turned out autistic.
Woo!
A lot of professionals do want us to pass an exam, actually. So perhaps they should be offering, instead of getting a letter of diagnosis, you should get a congratulations
certificate.
Or something.
Yeah.
But yeah. Sorry, that's just one of my bugbears, that people don't have access to diagnosis, and then professionals can have a go at people who self-identify or have to get a private diagnosis. Is just like, you know. I won't digress.
I wanted to just not disagree, but refine the point about capitalism being a problem. Because, like, yeah, but it's not just capitalism. It's systems of power and oppression, and capitalism is the economic manifestation of that, I guess. But like, if we're talking about why the majority of the world is oppressed, we have to talk about imperialism and we have to talk about white supremacy. And all of this ties in with disability and why certain ways of, being and experiencing the world are stigmatized and treated as wrong and inadequate. And it ties in with, patriarchy and all of this. It's about like norms and the idea that there are some people who are better than others, and that manifests in so many ways.
I suppose I'm being a bit sloppy, and I'm tying in imperialism, capitalism, and colonialism, and I'm putting them all in a big ball. And it's a bit more nuanced than that, but I'm just being sloppy.
It's not like you can actually separate them. It's just sometimes it's worth naming the parts.
Yeah. I think this is one of the reasons why we started introducing storytelling at our Autistic Pride events, because we're kind of looking around and thinking, who's not here, who's not represented, and how can we make those people feel like this is a safe space for them? And I think that's where representation comes in. So this year we're bringing along A Day with No Words, which is written by Tiffany Hammond, who's a Black autistic advocate. And not only that, they write about the experiences of being non-speaking and using AAC. And I think that a lot of non-speakers quite often get missed out. I know I'm being quite verbal today, but I'm a part-time AAC user myself, and it's really difficult finding that sort of representation somewhere. So seeing a book where there's a parent who is using AAC with their child is so meaningful to me as somebody who's a part-time AAC user, and I know that that's going to be meaningful to others, and it's got other really good representation. And this year we're bringing along Autistic in Black, and we're being very thoughtful about which chapters do we want to read from, and I reached out to Calla and said, is there any chapter you want me to read from, and specifically as well, and And I think it's a really important thing to be, having a think. This is a great celebration, it's lovely, but who's not here? And what can we do better to make it more accessible for everybody? And we always have to be thinking about that every single year. And I know that there's more that we could do at Autistic Pride Aberdeen. So I know that you said you're learning loads from us, Sofia, but I'm learning loads from you too. This is a two-way street here. But yeah, I think you're right as well, Kabie, with that comment about, are you particularly proud about being autistic? One of the things that I remember when we were setting up the very first Autistic Pride, I was sat in a council meeting where we were talking about, the local autism strategy, and somebody there sort of piped up and said that we shouldn't be putting on Pride because some people don't like being autistic. And they're not wrong that some people don't like being autistic, but my response at the time, and I stand by it, was that this is exactly why we put on Autistic Pride. This is exactly why we need any kind of Pride event, really, because there are some people who really struggle to accept their identity, who find that really, really difficult. And I think that whole process, Kabie, you were talking about getting access to sort of, assessments and diagnosis and formal identification. That is really hard to get access to. And if you do get access to it and you go through it, that can be a very, very difficult process for an awful lot of people, because so much of it is based on where you fall down from society's expectations. And it's fine if you've got a really good clinician who knows what they're doing, who uses that neuroaffirming language. But if you don't, then that can actually cause an awful lot of trauma in and of itself. And I think the other thing that you kind of, picked up on as well was that ought washing of language, where someone will say happy Autistic Pride quickly followed by ASD or ASC, and that I'm seeing that more and more often, and it's really frustrating me too. And I kind of wish that that I knew more of what we can do about it.
I think that comes from people just trying to, again, half-heartedly or just being lazy. Like, they think it's cool, so let's do Pride, let's do Autistic Pride, but then they don't want to go and do the work behind it. Advocacy in any sense for any population, for any community, requires that genuine, authentic hard work behind to actually understand the cause as to why we're doing it before you just jump on, because there are so many people still learning. But I get that as well. It's like, I'm just learning and really sorry for my language and all that. I appreciate that. I appreciate the people who will take the lead from me and say, I'm really sorry for what I'm saying is going to be offensive. And I'm like, absolutely not offended. And like, they're the ones, the people who absolutely do not offend me. It's the ones who then use language arrogantly, thinking they know better, or not even having a curiosity mindset to think that let's learn from you and your experiences or your community. Because they just think like, okay, we're kind of, I don't know, it's like talking a stick or giving me a favor by giving me a voice or giving me a platform. And it's like, no, you don't want to be in those spaces, because that kind of tells you which people are the safe people, allies, and which people aren't.
It ties in again, doesn't it, with the question of who's included and how, and who's watching out for who's not included. So yeah, we were talking about the corporatization of Pride earlier, and I think that's very related to the kinds of queers who have benefited the most from LGBTQ plus progress of the last 30 years, which is to extent it's all of us, but I think it's fair to say that well-off white gay men have benefited significantly more than ethnic minority disabled queers, for example, particularly gender non-conforming, trans, and we've got all of these corporations who have seen the opportunity to, like, I don't know, win some public approval by slapping rainbow flags on things, but aren't doing any of the work to make things better for the the portions of the queer population who are really suffering badly.
Yeah, you never really see those corporate organizations like the ones that sponsor the really big prides, like Barclays. I was thinking, should I mention people? Yeah, Barclays is a big one that everyone bangs on about. But you know, all of the other organizations as well, it isn't just them. Like you walk past a few shops and they'll all have the flags in the window. And where are they for the cast report? What are they saying? You know, a bit of tumbleweed silence there. They're not, you know, they're putting up the flags and they're doing the smileys, but I don't know how they treat the staff. They might treat them incredibly well, but they're certainly not trying to intervene in legislation or trying to be supportive to those people who are more marginalized. And like you say, it kind of is always the white wealthy men, always who benefit from kind of everything and have a little buffer zone around them and can maybe navigate things, and people forgive them because, you know, they have the money and they have the power, so they can be a bit more, I don't know, even historically for autistic people, they were the kind of people that would go, oh yeah, they're a bit eccentric, and they would be able to afford there's like the thing, isn't there, where people say, oh, disabled people, why have they got a cleaner, why have they got this, why have they got that? Whereas if you're actually a wealthy person, you can have a cleaner and a gardener and a nanny, and you can have someone to run your household, and you can have a PA, and you can have all of that. It's about money. It's not, so disabled people needing those things are looked down upon, but someone who has wealth needing those things is seen as successful. It's, yeah, don't know where I was going with that. Hopefully you know where I was going with that. But it's like, yeah, I suppose it's the prejudice. Prejudice is always aimed at certain groups of people, and it doesn't tend to be the wealthy people, the wealthy white people. They don't tend to be criticised for like having someone to organise their diary and clean their house. That's just what they do. That's fine. Like, how dare someone on benefits need a cleaner?
How dare someone be on benefits in the first place, even?
Be more organized. Actually, I had one of the psychiatrists telling me that, and I was like, dude, you got a PA, man. That's easy. You've got someone scheduling for you. I need that someone to give me that person. And then, yeah, I'm very sure the ADHD won't impact my life as much if I had what you had. And again, that was a privileged white man saying that to me. So.
It makes me think about representations as well. So for a long time, all of the major cultural touchstones for autism were white guys, right? That's less true than it was. We've now got like moderately prominent autistic white women, which is, you know, it's progress of a sort, but where are the ethnic minority autistics? We're still very short on like visible queer representations of autistic people, which is weird. If you know like a bunch of autistic people, you know that it's not like it's unusual.
I don't think we're as bad on queer representation.
Not as bad. No,
not as bad.
It's relatively recent, but
as like, you know, autistic people come from all walks of life and all ethnicities, and I think that the queer representation is improving. But I think for like black and brown people, we're just really rubbish. We're just really bad, and it is embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
We had
to the point of embarrassment. We are bad at being too white.
We had Abed from Community, and it seems to have stopped from there. Yeah. I still want to see an autistic menopausal parent who's struggling and managing with their hormones going all over the place, and dealing with a teenager whose hormones are going all over the place, and that kind of, because you don't see older autistics very often either. I mean, in Dinosaur that came out recently, brilliant to see Scottish autistic representation, but again, could have. I think there are things that could have maybe been. There had one older man who seemed to be autistic, and I was thinking that's the first time I've seen a chap in their 60s, potentially late 50s, early 60s, being represented as being autistic. But the oldest autistic person that I've personally supported has been in their 80s. And wanted to know if they were autistic before going into a care home so that they could have their needs represented. So yeah, I think that there's a whole host of different. But when we get a black, queer, autistic, disabled older person on TV, that we still won't have made it, but it'll be a big step in the right direction. Still a long way to go.
It'd be on TV though. I hadn't even thought of TV when I was talking. I think I was thinking more about your NAS and your community leaders and people because they're out there. They're obviously out there and they're trying. But I think Sofia gave us a bit of an insight earlier as to why what the difficulties are. So, but I think we've been very bad as. Not, I don't mean just us here. I mean as an entire community, trying to work through not just how to platform people, because that can end up being a bit tokenistic, but how to. Yeah, we're just really bad at welcoming people. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what those faces mean, Fergus. I can see your pulling faces, and I don't know what they mean.
No, I mean, yeah, we have, as a community, not been great at including our more disadvantaged members across the board. I think we should talk about class here as well, because working class autistic people, have you ever seen one on TV or in a film? Identifiably working class? I'm not sure I have. And again, in the movement, like I think the autistic rights movement is often criticized for foregrounding relatively privileged autistic people, across a number of axes. The one that mostly comes up is, are we really all that disabled? Surely if you're speaking and articulate, you can't have it that bad. And like that is largely rubbish, right? But it's also true that the most disabled people are underrepresented in our movement, and so are working class people, and so are ethnic minorities. And it's it's not like this is an autistic problem. It's a problem across society. And the people who are able to get a bit of a platform. Like, I don't think any of us have like a huge platform, but people listen to us a little bit sometimes, and the people who are in those positions are still more likely to be privileged in some way. Although people don't know how much we're struggling. Also, I don't want to imply that any of us are not struggling, because oh my God, I know about our lives, and yeah.
Well, I'm working class. But yeah, I've done things that maybe I don't know. But I have had conversations with other autistic people who are also working class, and it is very different. And it's really weird when I meet those people and we have conversations, and it's like, yeah, and they get me. I'm like, yeah, it's really weird, isn't it? These people are a bit strange. So class stuff is really important, and that is one of the ones I think that gets forgotten. And
it's interesting you bring that up there too, because just last night my daughter was asking me, what class do we fit in? And I'm like, education wise, perhaps we would have moved up a class from how I grew up in working class. But then it's like job opportunities. Like I keep getting rejected, like this past couple of months I've been looking for jobs, and each time even for teaching autistic kids, I'm not good enough for that either. So imagine education wise, and fair enough, I'm trying to move up the class system, but what I don't understand what are the boundaries of class and categorization of it, because I couldn't even answer that question. Like work wise, I'm not too sure, because I still haven't been able to move up and provide for my children as I should have or could have, given my education or skills. But that's not my fault. That's because of all the barriers, because can never get past an interview stage. So it's like, it's a class bit. Imagine if I did have that, ability to be middle class, or not ability, opportunity, then I would have that money. Then I could have, a cleaner or someone to help out, paying someone for the gardening. So it's not going to be my problem. I can get someone outsourcing. I have that ability to outsource, given the opportunity to, work on my own, experiences and skills. It's a down system, and again, being disabled, being marginalised already keeps you down. It doesn't let you get into that bracket where you can be afforded those privileges of getting support in a socially accepted way.
Yeah.
The way you're saying that as well, both a socially accepted way, because the people who are upper middle class or not high class, upper class people, we talk about it in the Lords, House of Lords, where they get free meals, but then we're voting against free school meals for our kids. And it's like, actually, they get a lot of the benefits, but then for the disability benefit, then no, that's not allowed. Again, it's like, who's it for? Who's benefiting? And that same benefit looks very different for different people, and how it's accepted.
Definitely, I know that people look at where I live and look and see, oh, that's social housing, and I know that other people get, they'll look at where other people live, and you do get a different service. I know you do. That sounds paranoid, but it can be true.
Yeah, I do relate to that, which class do you sort of, because I grew up very working class, and I'm not sure that would necessarily apply now, but whenever that was your life for a very, very long time, it's difficult to sort of switch that mind. But given it has gone past 11 o'clock now, because we do just like to have a good blether, Sophia, you made a really, really good suggestion earlier about winding up with what's the future of Autistic Pride? So what do we want to see for Autistic Pride moving forward?
I'll go first for that one. Let's talk about Autistic Pride with the right language and actual inclusion. Yeah, so like when you talk about in-person events and online events and looking at who's missing, whose voices need to be held and promoted, who needs to be listened to, more storytelling, because yeah, I think that's the way forward.
Yeah, I'd like to see many more events, and for it to be something that every autistic person and, well, everyone knows about, and for it to continue to be something that particularly autistic children know about, because I think it's useful for young people to know that that's a time when autistic people come together and there is a community and there are people out there, and for us to work on our inclusion.
How about you, Fergus?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to live in a world where all autistic people feel able to be proud of who they are. And yeah, that means, starting young. I think there's a real problem with how autistic kids are learning about autism for the most part. And that really needs to change. I think we've got the seeds of that. The tools are available to teach kids about autism in a way which helps them to accept and celebrate themselves. But not enough people know about them.
Given that this is being recorded and people might listen back, do you want to mention a couple of those tools?
Do you want to mention some of those tools, since it's being recorded and people can
Right,
listen?
yeah, sure. So books for autistic kids, things like Frankie's World is lovely little graphic novel by Irish author about an autistic kid realizing that she's autistic, although actually that only comes in about 3/4 of the way through the book. The rest of it's just a delightful adventure. Kind of Spark, again, a story for autistic kids by an autistic author, now a major BBC TV series as well. Things like A Different Kind of Normal, Abigail Balfe is lovely. Lots of videos and things as well.
But it's that's almost like a get them in your school library now.
Yes, get them in your school library now, exactly.
Well, I mean, that was something that we did do a few years ago, was donate books by autistic authors to all of the local schools in the Aberdeen area, and it's still one of my most favourite things that I've ever done. And we went into some of the schools and read the books out loud to the kids and had these storytelling sessions, and we did it during COVID, and we did it online, and to like I've got whole classes. I do remember there was I know I don't talk about my family very often, but there was one day a few years ago when I was dropping my kid off at school, and I could see the whiteboard through the window, and up on the whiteboard it said Happy Autistic Pride Day, and my heart was so full. And I was like, this is brilliant. And I saw the teacher, and the teacher said, I saw your post this morning about it, and I read it, and we're going to make sure that we celebrate it today. And I'm feeling a bit tearful just thinking about it, because it really, it meant so much that there was a teacher who made an effort to listen to autistic advocates and listen to the language that we're using and respect our culture and our community. So it wasn't taking it from a non-autistic source where they were sort of washing and using some good language, but then using deficit-based as well. And that meant the world to me. And if I could replicate that teacher, I really would too. I was so proud. I thought, this is brilliant. And yeah, more of that. And at an earlier age, because the earlier we have kids finding out that they're autistic and learning about advocating for their needs, the more it's seen as like standard procedure. The non-autistic kids see the autistic kids thriving, then there's going to be more opportunities for those autistic kids growing up and growing older. And that's where I want to see. I want to see all autistic kids thriving as they grow up. And as somebody who, sort of like all of us had a lot of trauma related to not being recognised as being autistic, seeing our kids growing up and, the children that we support in the classroom, it can be so healing for us as adults, knowing that they're not necessarily going through all of the same thing as we do. And yes, Pablo. Big love for Pablo.
We have, my young one's got a WhatsApp group with autistic kids in our community. Quite a lot of the Pakistani kids, and maybe some non-Pakistani kids as well, but they're all autistic and they're all in one group chat together, and they'll share the memes and all that. I mean, imagine if I had that when I was growing up, where you can just be your authentic self. How cool is that, right?
Love it.
And we need more of that. Our communities, they don't have to be in person, but because we thrive on online, right? And we have our communities all over the world, internationally. Last night I was talking to somebody from Morocco and Pakistan, or I'll have somebody from Canada or US, but I'm all over, and I'm seeing with both my young people. The older one has learned Japanese and Chinese and Russian because that's his autistic community. And I'm like, dude, learn your own language. It's like, you're not interested so much, but you learn those languages because that's his gaming and that's his community there. So it's like building that international community where there's no boundaries of culture and language, but it's that autistic commonality, that support and feeling welcome and at home with these people. So celebrating that, I think having Pride makes it visible, and it helps you. Again, it's a good networking opportunity to find other autistic people in your area. With us online, it's obviously international then, hopefully, but then if it's in your area, to know that actually I'm not the only one here, and feeling that connection with other people is huge. And schools play a big part in that, a huge part in that. I mean, they do really well with LGBTQ stuff, right? But is it tokenistic? I'm not, questionable. But is it same with the Autistic Pride? It needs to be much more visible, and yes, schools should make a start by listening to actual autistic advocates.
Two more things I should have mentioned. Autism Understood from Spectrum Gaming is a brilliant resource about all kinds of key ideas for understanding autism, written for kids. And NeuroBears do courses for families, which I haven't done the courses, but they look lovely, and I have a lot of respect for the people involved in making them. So, recommended.
Yes, Spectrum Gaming isn't just written for autistic kids. I think a lot of it is written by
autistic kids, yeah.
And the rest of it's written by autistic adults.
Yeah. So
can't go wrong. Is that a lovely place for us to be finishing then, folks? Fantastic. I've really enjoyed speaking to the three of you. I always do. And getting to talk about Autistic Pride, which is one of our favourite topics, is even better. So I hope that those people who are watching it have really enjoyed it too. And I can't wait to come back and talk about something else at some point soon as well. Will we do that?
We should do it more often.
Yes.
All right, let's do that then.
Maybe our audience can give us some ideas of what they want us to talk about as well.
Excellent idea.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.